they had experience on the maze. They knew the maze really, really well. The rookie rats had not been on this new maze, so they were at a disadvantage. So who do you think would win the race? The veteran rats who were experienced, or the rookie rats that were fast?
Veterans.
The veterans?
Okay, you would assume the old rats would win, but I forgot to tell you one thing, and that is Tolman turned the maze upside down so it was completely backwards. Now who's going to win the race?
The rookies.
It could go either way.
Well, when the race started, they all took off, and the experienced veteran lab rats won every race by a big margin. And then the question is why? And the reason is what we call latent learning. Did you remember that learning is permanent and you can use it sooner or later? It becomes a permanent part of your repertoire of behaviors, and you can use it in different contexts. You can use it forwards or backwards, or upside down or sideways. If you learn something, you can use it in a new context or a new setting. So they were able to, they had actually cognitive maps in their brain where they were familiar with the maze and they could turn it upside down or right side up. Yes?
Because it was turned upside down, wouldn't that be kind of an example of accommodation? Like, it's the same maze, but it was flipped, so they just had to, like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be an example of accommodation, sort of?
It was backwards. So they had a map in their brain of the maze that they had learned, and so they could use it in a different context. We call that latent learning, and it again tells us how learning is so versatile. Okay, so number 12 is Baby Albert, and I think we exposed you to the idea. Albert was a baby that was trained, classically conditioned to fear furry objects. They did stimulus generalization, and he became fearful of all the furry things. And then unfortunately he disappeared, and for many years they didn't know what happened to him. So if you go on line, you can find out recently they discovered what occurred to him. What I wanted to tell you was John B. Watson wrote an article for a popular magazine at the completion of his research in 1920, and people read the magazine article and they believed what he said, and he was quoted by saying, "Give me your child, I don't care what race, I don't care what gender, I don't care what IQ, I can make your child into anything that I choose through classical conditioning. I can make him a beggar, I can make him a chief." So people read it and believed it, and behaviorism got really famous. Now he, granted, classical conditioning is powerful, but he exaggerated some. Number 13 is taste aversion. And I dare say everyone in the room has had an experience where you get taste aversion. And that is where you eat something and then you get sick in conjunction with that food, and then from then on it's very, very powerful. You have to shun that food completely. So, John Garcia was a migrant farm worker in Southern California, Mexican heritage, and he was extremely bright. So he he got a scholarship to college later in life, and he got a PhD at UCLA. His first teaching job was at Eastern Washington University in Cheney, Washington, of all places. And when he was there as a professor, he pointed out that good old Pavlov was wrong about the timing between step 3 and step 1. Remember we said you ring the bell and then you present the dog food? Does anyone remember the timing that was suggested?
1 second.
Yeah, approximately 1 second. Garcia said it doesn't have to be a second. It could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours, it could be 6 hours. It's still going to work the same. And they said, Garcia, you're just a migrant farm worker. What do you know? You're no Pavlov. And so he said, well, I'll prove it. And what he said was, you go out to lunch and you order something really exotic that you've never had before. So you order escargot.
Ugh.
And escargot, fresh snails, sauteed in butter and garlic, and they're delicious. You eat them and you like them. Okay, that's for lunch. And then later that evening, you come down with the flu bug, and you get sick and you vomit. And then what do you think you might blame the illness on? Any ideas?
Yes, escargot.
The escargot, the new and exotic food. And then what happens? From now on, you can't eat escargot, you can't smell it, you can't think about it. It's extremely powerful. It's hard to overcome. And then so in his example, he proved that the illness was classically connected to the food, but it wasn't 1 second between the two items. It was like 6 hours. And so sure enough, Garcia was correct. Garcia got promoted to UCLA as a professor, and he became president of the Western Psych Association. Now he's retired and he lives in Mount Vernon, Washington. But very smart guy. And then the question is, why? Why did we react so powerfully? Well, it is an example of evolution perspective. Remember, in evolution perspective, if we have a history of certain behaviors in our background, then those are the behaviors that we learn best. So, if the cavemen ever ate poison berries or whatever, poison food, and if they survived, they would remember never eat the poison berries again. So that's how they survived. So it was important to them for survival. And those are the things. We have a long history of people foraging around for thousands and thousands of years. Before Garcia moved to Los Angeles, the ranchers in Cheney, Washington were concerned about the coyotes eating the sheep, killing the sheep. And so Garcia said, he would do a taste aversion. So he got some sheep carcasses and he threw them out, laced with poison, and the coyotes ate the sheep carcass that was poisoned. They got sick. And so they got taste aversion to sheep, and they couldn't stand sheep. So pretty soon, the sheep started chasing the coyotes. Believe it or not, they have that on film. So that's the story of John Garcia. Number 14 is Premack principle, otherwise known as grandmother's rule. And this is a wonderful idea. It's very simple, but quite powerful. In life, we usually have work tasks and fun tasks. It might be eating your spinach and eating your lemon pie dessert. Or it might be going home after school and doing your homework, or going out with your friends and socializing in the evening, okay? So, quite often we procrastinate and we do the fun task first, and then we wait till the last moment and then we do the work task. And we think it motivates us to do a better job. But unfortunately it doesn't. And a much better way to go would be always do the work task first. And then reinforce your healthy work habits by rewarding yourself with a fun task right after you complete the work task. So you always reinforce your good work habits. So some people learn that really early in life, and some people learn it late, and some people don't learn it. But if you go home after school and complete your homework, so to speak, then you can relax, stress-free, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon and evening. Okay, so Premack principle. Okay, let's switch focus and we'll talk a little bit about memory. How do we process information into our memory? There are actually 3 steps: E, S, and R. The E means to encode. Now, encode means that you hear, by listening, you attend to the information. So some of you are very good at naturally attending lecture information, for example. Some of you, you have a better imagination, and so you think about other stuff. You don't necessarily attend to the information. So to be able to encode, you have to be able to actively hear what's being said, to actively process information. And the better you process it at the time, the better you can recall it at the end. So the second step is called storage. So when you hear information, you store it in your brain. You never run out of room. You try to use an organized system rather than haphazard. Kind of like the library, they file their books by a system. Otherwise, we couldn't find them. And the same can be said for our brain. Usually, we get new information and we put it in our brain next to something that we already know, that's familiar to us. So the more we know, the easier it is to learn. You think it might be the opposite, but it's not. And then, can we retrieve it? Say on Monday for the quiz, can we retrieve that information? And the answer is yes, about as well as we encode it in the first place. So all of these steps kind of overlap, but it's an active learning process. Spacing is the best way to enhance your memory. I told you that once before. It comes up again. Spacing, do a little bit each day. 10 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, 10 minutes the next day. You double and triple your memory, so you don't need to cram at the end. Otherwise, you do need to cram at the end, and it's not that effective. Not many people use spacing. I actually use spacing because I'm a little bit lazy sometimes, and it saves me some time. So if I have something to do tomorrow that's kind of difficult, I'll do it like haphazardly today because I don't have to, and I'll just do it. And then when I do it, and then tomorrow when I have to do it right, I already know it, just like that. So spacing really helps. Serial position means we know the first